Hello, I'm Matthieu Repellin. First of all, I'd like to thank you, JETRO, and Hello Tomorrow for hosting this event and giving us the opportunity to speak to the audience. Don't think I will intro myself. There was a quick intro already, really in a nutshell. So I'm a principal with Airbus Ventures, that is a typical early stage VC fund based in the Silicon Valley and operating across the world. My connection with Hello Tomorrow is actually not recent. We've been in touch since I think the early days of the creation of the association, so somewhere in maybe 2013, 2014, around those lines in Europe. And since then, I've been in touch with this community, which for me is probably one of the best for early stage deep tech startups. So that's a really great community, and I'm really happy to see that there's also activities in Japan with Hello Tomorrow. For this talk, what I would like to do is basically give you a quick introduction of who is Airbus Ventures, what we do, how we do it. Then I will basically give you some insights on why we actually also look at the Japanese ecosystem. This is obviously tied to our investment thesis that I will detail a bit more afterwards. And then we'll go for maybe quick conclusion and Q&As if we have time. I have in mind that I have more or less 15 to 20 minutes for this talk. So very quickly, Airbus Ventures, at a glance, I would say, is a VC fund that was launched in 2015. We are a fully independent financial vehicle, so there's no strings attached to our investments. We're actually on a third fund with Airbus as our anchor investor, along with other external investors, among which there's DPJ, for example, Development Bank of Japan, Fuyo General Lease, and Mitsubishi Chashi Capital. So some Japanese players actually backing the fund. What we do is the following. So we are focusing on early stage companies, which for us means Series Seed to Series B. We can go up to Series D on follow-on investment, and depending on the situation, we can lead or we can follow. It really depends. The check size that we write for all parts, thank you for the inputs on the slide. So check size would range from $500,000 up to $10 million US. So I guess this is somewhere around 70 million yen up to maybe a billion, 1.3 billion. We'll look at startups that are focusing on technologies and business model that we believe will impact the future of aerospace. So this for us includes things around autonomy, connectivity, electrification, low carbon economy initiatives, everything around advanced material, new space, manufacturing systems, security. We also have a bucket for frontier tech, where we include things like quantum computing, quantum sensing, and others, as well as AI-related topics. So fairly broad investment thesis, but the connecting thread is that those things we believe will impact the future of aerospace at one stage. Just very quickly about the team. So this is roughly 12 people. The headquarters is in the Silicon Valley, where we have about 5 people, but really the team is completely distributed across the world. So we have people on the US West Coast, we have people on the East Coast, we have people in Europe, in France, as well as in Germany to address the Western Europe ecosystem, as well as Israel. And we have an office in Tokyo, where you have on that screen Lewis, partner in charge in Tokyo, as well as Yuichiro Ikosaka on the bottom right of this slide, who's also based in Tokyo, and they address the Japanese ecosystem, obviously, as well as Asia Pacific. But overall, we're really operating as one fund globally, and we interact across borders. So far, we invested in roughly 50 companies. with about 2/3 of the portfolio being in the US and 1/3 rest of the world in between Europe and Asia. I think we have 5 investments in Japan, of which some of which you may know, like iSpace, Infostellar, Telexistence, companies like that. I think we also have another one in due diligence currently. So we've been investing in Japan. The team likes to be hands-on, so we leverage the network of the team in the industry and beyond to help portfolio companies grow, taking active roles as board director, board observer in different situations, and we operate really autonomously. So this means as a pure financial VC. That being said, Airbus mothership and or LP network is also a key benefit to our portfolio company, and we help them interact with that ecosystem to drive their performance. So that's the idea. So really, if I conclude that part about Airbus Ventures, what we do, what we are, we do it, I think that the key element is really that we are independent early stage VC group. We focus on technology, business model that will impact the future of aerospace. And we really believe that aerospace itself is unique and critical and has a great role in addressing Earth's challenges. And so for us, that's also an angle that we look at when we look at potential investment opportunities. It takes me to the next topic, which is why Japan and why we actually have a footprint out there and why we like this ecosystem. And I think for us, it's just because it's relevant. It's a relevant tech ecosystem where there's a lot of knowledge from both public and private organization. There's talent and there's capital. And these are usually the key components you look for, let's say, the emergence of an attractive entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we focus on deep tech, and Japan is home to many companies that are, or universities, research center, agencies. So it has always been a technology hub. And so for us, it makes perfect sense to be present there. Tokyo ecosystem for robotics, digital and beyond, Osaka, Kyoto, Kobe for smart city, industry 4.0, new material, things like that. I will detail the investment thesis of Airbus Ventures slightly later, but for us, this really resonates well with our investment thesis. As I mentioned, from a funding perspective, there's capital. And so market structure on that front may be slightly different, but there's really capital there. And I think that's one unique thing in Japan is the way corporates have seized the opportunity of teaming up with financial VC firms as GPs. And that's really something very interesting, in my opinion. Other element we like about that ecosystem is that there's really a relevant market. The domestic market is very significant. And that's a big difference, for example, with the fragmented European market, where for a startup, it's actually super tough to go one country after the other one. I think roughly, if we exclude China, I guess Japan comes second in terms of GDP after the US. So that's really a very significant market. It's also a good match with our thesis. And as I was mentioning, robotics, fuel cells, space exploration, all those things are part of what we're looking at. And it's also a cultural fit to some extent. It may not be obvious, but for Airbus Ventures, there's really a culture of trust, respect, and long-term relationship and partnership. And that really resonates well with the deep tech ecosystem and the Japanese ecosystem, in my opinion. So for me, conclusion for this quick explanation of why Japan, I think for me, it's really most of the ingredients are there for good project to emerge from that ecosystem. And so that's why we're there. So what we look for, basically going to walk you through our investment thesis so that you get a better sense of what we are actually doing somewhat in detail, I would say. I talked very quickly about some financial elements at the very beginning, but just reminding them. So we're financially driven. We focus on early stage, which for us is seeds, Series A and B. And keep in mind that for us, this is more a question of maturity of companies more than just the letter A, B, or whatever. If I dive into some details on the sectors, I mentioned the fact that the idea is we invest in things that will impact the aerospace, but I would say not only. You don't need to be exclusively focusing on aerospace. It's a domain that can be slow, regulated, complex. We also look at projects that are developing solutions for other markets and where the technology maybe will be transferable into the aerospace industry later on the long run. So that's for the big picture. If we dive into our investment thesis, I mentioned autonomy, connectivity, electrification, low carbon economy, advanced material, new space, etc. So just giving you a bit more granularity into that. When we think about autonomy, for example, we think about computing, we think about sensor, and we also think about all the software stack that could be supporting autonomy of vehicle. Connectivity, it's around ground-to-ground connectivity, it's around ground-to-air, air-to-space, space-to-space, and all the technological bricks that could deliver a full solution. A couple of examples here would be Infostellar, for example, that's part of our portfolio, as well as Transcelestial. If I look at electrification and low carbon economy, here we're really focusing on things around energy generation, mobile storage of energy, so battery, fuel cell, potentially fusion, all those elements. We look at ecological restoration, all the enablers for the hydrogen economy, sustainable fuel cells, etc., etc. Also things around electric drivetrain, electric motor, power electronics. So that's a big bucket here around electrification and low carbon economy. We also look at advanced material, where basically anything that is going to be stronger, lighter, or has a interesting environmental impact is something that would be considered part of our investment thesis. New space is, as I mentioned, something we look at also. So launch system, couple of launchers in our portfolio, satellites, and everything in between, basically. So the software stack to process data from space, all the subsystem, the services, these are things that we're interested in and we can look at. With regard to manufacturing, this will be more on additive layer manufacturing, 3D printing, Industry 4.0 kind of things, predictive maintenance, etc. And with regard to security, that was also something I mentioned earlier. What we'll be looking at is basically, we look at it through two different angles. One is basically security of platforms and vehicles, and the other one is security of more industrial infrastructure. And last but not least, frontier tech. In that bucket, we put things like quantum computing, quantum sensing, potentially quantum communication, advanced computing systems, cryptography, post-quantum cryptography, fully homomorphic encryption, stuff around those lines. So that's it. So you have now, I guess, a much wider perspective on what we are doing in terms of investment thesis. Just want to remind one thing is that technology is one thing, but we're also looking at business model innovations. And so that's also a critical element to keep in mind. Usually this goes in tandem. I guess I'm done with the presentation. I wasn't aware of the timer that I see on the chat, but so I guess we're roughly at 15 minutes. And so if there is any question, feel free to ask them. I'll be happy to handle them, to answer. If you feel that there's a good fit with what you're doing, assuming there's startups in the room, feel free to reach out if you think that we should talk. Any question? Thanks for the question. Two elements I will provide on that. I think that we invest in seed, Series A and B, and as you mentioned, there's a big difference in terms of maturity. and somehow different risks associated to those stages. For us, I think it's we actually have a different way to assess those investments depending on the maturity. And so our expectation for a company that is seed stage will be different from our expectation from a company that is maybe a Series B. And it will also be different if we are actually investing for the first time in a Series B, or if this is actually a follow-on investment in a company where we've invested already in the seed and the Series A. So I would say, unfortunately, there's no one answer to that question, but for us, it's just like making sure that we use the right framework to assess a potential investment, and that this framework is relevant to the maturity of the company. I hope this answered the question.